Hey guys, good evening. This is Lisa. Well, I'm recording this in the evening, obviously. Welcome to my house. Normally you see me in the office at the Arnold campus because that's the one with the door, but it's late at night and so everyone's asleep, and so I thought I would get some videos recorded. As you can see, I probably could have put on a more interesting costume for you. But I wanted to talk a little bit about Chapter 1 and hit some of the places that people struggle with and some of the concepts that are not always the most clear. So I'm not going to hit every slide in this PowerPoint. Good Lord, don't want to make you do that, but just a few of the big key points to kind of help you understand things. So when I look at looking at Chapter 1, some of the things I know that I'll be expecting you to make sure you know are these different kinds of communication and making sure that you can kind of understand the differences between like impersonal and intrapersonal, meaning in your head, so that when you are really looking at a communication and trying to figure out what is going well or not going well, you can really dissect it and make it make sense to you. So just make sure you know these things, and that's in the book. It's pretty clear. And I wanted to talk about the communication models, and we'll see if this actually comes up the way I would like it to. Yes, you may still do that. See if it's going to do it. All right, good. It did it. Yay. Okay, so the big piece in Chapter 1 is the communications process. And they talk a lot about how the communication process works. And it's really interesting because we've really only been visualizing this model for a certain period of time, and now we're starting to kind of slowly but surely change how we think about communication as we learn more about the brain. And if you look at this model here, and you look at this kind of animation that you see on your screen, one of the things that you'll see is that we used to think of communication as a very much a one-way street. From one person to the other, then they got the message. It was like a game of catch, kind of back and forth. Now, we really see it as a give and take. So the thing that you'll always see between the linear model, which is this old style model, it's actually like from the 1920s, was that there's a sender and a receiver. If you look at kind of how we see communication today, it's transactional, meaning that people are both simultaneously sending and receiving messages. That can make it, though, kind of confusing when you're trying to learn the parts. So if you look at the linear model, it kind of helps you understand things. The big pieces here that people get mixed up. Number one, encoding and decoding. The sender encodes a message. So they take the thing that they want to communicate. It's in their head. They choose how they want to convey it. They send that message that's encoding there, right? Choosing your words or choosing your gesture or whatever that is. Then sending it along a channel to the receiver, who then decodes it. And the thing I always say is that the receiver is in charge of decoding the message. Once it's sent, the sender can do nothing, right? We're done. So it's really important to understand that the sender encodes and the receiver decodes. Now, because of interaction coordination, we're encoding and decoding all the time, but it's still important to really understand that disconnect. Also, make sure you know what noise is. We have external noise, so I don't know if you can hear it, but there's a fan behind me. That's external noise, or if the dog would start barking. Internal noise is in here. It's this, like, for example, like right now, my throat hurts. I've got a scratchy throat. So part of my internal noise, while I'm trying to remember what I'm going to say to you, I'm also thinking about, okay, how much longer can I talk before it starts to get hard to understand? So you'll kind of see that that internal noise has a tendency to distract us from our messages. And that's what you're doing in Field Book 1, which is kind of irrelevant there. One other thing that I don't know is well explained in your book is the difference between rich and lean channel. A rich channel is a channel of conveying a message with lots of information. So face-to-face, for example. Whereas a lean channel is going to be something like the cell phone, where there isn't that much there's not that much message. In a mediated communication like the cell phone, if someone says, hey, do you want to go tonight? And I say, okay, period. There's no tone of voice there. There's a bunch of stuff missing. So people have a tendency to fill in the blanks with their own perceptions, which we'll talk about Chapter 2. So that's that. And there's lots of other stuff that I could go into here, but I'm not going to read you the book, basically. Make sure you know the difference between meaning and message. Meaning is what we have in our head. Message is what actually either comes out of our mouth or is conveyed through our body. Very key difference. Okay. The other piece I think that is kind of missing from your book is talking a little bit about context. I ask you in the Paula and Mike case study to talk about context, and not everybody really understands what that means. Context is the background in which a communication takes place. So it's like the backdrop. And in the more of it that we share, the easier the communication, the more difficult or the more distant, the harder. All these things are at play. So when you look at like Paula and Mike case study, which is what you're doing this week, you'll see these. So physical context is the first one. That's really, really easy. It's where are you physically located? Are you in a busy store at rush hour? And how is that affecting you? Additionally, being face to face means sharing a physical context. Social context, meaning what kind of relationship. There are all kinds of norms and rules that are involved in all of our relationships. And chapter 1 says that all communication is indexical, meaning that all communication has to do with trust, intimacy, and power. So it's kind of important to realize that that's happening here. In the Paula and Mike case study, for example, they've been married but only for 3 years. So they don't have all the rules kind of blended out. They don't kind of know what the rules are for their marriage. And that's a challenge for them, and that's why that's influencing that conversation. Historical is your baggage. It's whatever you bring. It's also the history of that relationship to a point. So in that case study, when he says you got the wrong thing again, that's kind of that historical context. They're bringing it back up. Pardon me, goodness. Long night, sorry. And then psychological is their state of mind. Obviously, it's rush hour. They're tired and they're grumpy. And then culture, which is the hardest one for a lot of people to spot, is all of our values and our attitudes and our backgrounds. A lot of people go, they're standard, American people, they don't have culture. We all have culture. Every single one of us has culture. We have co-cultures, which you're going to learn in chapter 3. And in the Paula and Mike case study, you might think about like socioeconomics. Maybe Paula was used to eating out and Mike wasn't because of how much money their families made. Maybe there was a disconnect between gender roles. So there's all kinds of really cool things going on in that conversation that you can pick up if you're looking. All right, I don't want to keep you on here too long because it's kind of boring to listen to me talk. Make sure you've got indexical and interaction coordination. Those are both in your book, basically talking about the fact that all of our communication is about more than just what we see on the surface. Okay? I love this quote. I think it's really cool. The only other piece that's really hard to understand is this bright side, dark side communication thing. And really, really quick, if you're trying to decipher this model, one thing that you can think of is replacing the word ethical with honest. That's obviously not the only aspect of ethics, but it's a really good way of understanding this model. Basically, bright side is honest, but also appropriate to the relationship and the situation. Hard side is honest, but not terribly appropriate. This is being super blunt. Easy is taking the easy way out, right? It's like little white lie. And then dark is being needlessly cruel. So like if someone said, how do I look today? And you thought they didn't look great. Easy side, you look fine, let's go. Dark side, you ugly. Hard side, you need to go fix that hot mess of you. And then bright side might be, this doesn't look good on you. It's not flattering. Why don't you go change into the other thing? All right, so hopefully that helps you make sense. Make sure that you're comfortable with these concepts. If you have any questions, please shoot me an email, and I'll see you online. Have a great week.